Welcome to Booked All Night, the podcast for storytellers and book lovers alike. I'm your host, Jessica Mary, and I'm joined weekly by Leigh and Magdalyn Ann as we geek out over great books and the craft of writing them. This week, we're discussing chapters 11 through 20 of The Rise of Issa Igwe by Shanna Miles. As an official Libronaut on our server, which is free by the way, you'll be able to listen in on our author interviews and drop a question to add to ours. Alright my little Libronauts, buckle up, settle in, and let's launch into The Rise of Issa Igwe. Well, that's copywritten songs. We can't use those.
I was going for the Doctor Who theme, but somehow just veered left into
Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Oops.
It's okay. Sometimes I start in Jurassic Park and I wind up in Indiana Jones. I don't know how it.
I think my problem was going for do instead of ooh-wee-oo. Ooh.
TARDIS noises. Stuff happens in these 10 chapters.
Stuff certainly did happen.
So she builds off of what already happened, right? We know that, like, the school has a history and the headmistress has a history. And we got to learn a little bit more about that this time. We got to see her in another class, right? She was in...
Articulation.
Articulation, thank you, yes. And the headmistress comes in and she's like, nope, not for you. You can sit here, but you can't do it. And then there's a fire and there's a resurrection in the cemetery. We learn that weird kid's name. Like, a lot happened in these 10 chapters.
My favorite part was when the headmistress shows up, or I think it might have been the assistant headmistress, but they show up in articulation and they're like, here are the exact opposites of disability accommodations for you.
Right.
The ADA would have a field day with this school if it ever got its paws on them.
Right? I feel like that's commentary on that, though. Like, I feel like that's so intentional, where they're like, okay, so in she comes, and she gets possessed, and we don't want that to happen. So instead of allowing her to participate at all, they're just like, well, you don't have to participate. And it was very much the, like, let's take all the special kids and put them in one classroom and not let them interact with anybody else. And the only difference is that she's here in the classroom, but she's not allowed to do anything.
Yeah, they're basically like, here's a coloring book. Go ahead and do that for the entire class period.
Hey, speaking of magic and coloring books, I saw this on TikTok and I feel like it's appropriate to bring up here, but it's a coloring book and you color in your own tarot cards and then they all pop out and you can have your own deck. Right? Isn't that cute?
That's neat. I want one of those.
Right? And so, like, Issa could work on that while she's waiting for permission to actually do school at school. And yeah, and that was so frustrating, but I also really liked it as a way for the adults to interfere. You know, like, this is something I talk about a lot with Kidlit, where the adults are either simpletons, they're completely inept and negligent, or they're, like, super authoritarian. And this one is coming in with an excuse, and this excuse is doing two things, right? We're obviously like, this person, no good, because we have finished these 10 chapters. But going into that, you can almost justify her actions, but it's like, okay, well, if she gets possessed again in here, there's no telling what might happen, which is part of the issue that sent her to that school in the first place. And so you can give it this guise of safety up front, and then by the time you get to, you know, the back half of these 10 chapters that we're talking about, we're like, oh, no, you're just a monster.
Yeah. So anyway, we learned the dead boy's name.
Yes, he's Lionel.
So we get through the articulation class where she's not allowed to articulate, and she's basically forced to just write down spells and see what happens.
Yeah.
Because she's not allowed to talk. And then there's the fire that happens in the horology barn.
Yeah.
Where, you know, she runs over and she's, you know, and everyone's coming out and they're trying to help all the students that were already in the barn. And then Issa is like, this is the perfect distraction for me to go steal some stuff.
Yeah, okay, so first off, she steals the egg timer. And the only egg timer I have in my possession is a little ice cream cone. And so the entire time she's talking about the egg timer, like, I know that there's a different description there, but my headcanon ice cream cone timer is all that I have.
See, mine fluctuated between a tomato and a chicken, and never an actual egg.
I don't think I've ever had an egg timer that was in the shape of an egg.
Yeah, mine is in the shape of my clock app on my phone and also my Google Nest Hub. And it's usually preceded by, hey, Google, start a 10-minute timer or a 6-minute timer or whatever type of egg I want.
So yeah, so she just thiefs the thing, and then she gets out of the fire. Lionel helps her out of the fire.
Yeah, she gets stuck in the fire, and she runs out the back towards like a little like hedged off garden area or something, and the fire's spreading and it's getting everywhere, right? And she's like, I'm in trouble. And then Lionel appears and is like, quick, this way, and he makes like a little hole in the hedge for her to run through, and that's how they find the cemetery.
Right.
Because he leads her through that hole and like up a hill or whatever to this cemetery. And the cemetery is so sad because most of it is like forgotten and overgrown and kind of like collapsing, and it's in a very sad state, and the majority of it are girls who died while on campus, usually under suspicious circumstances, and also the bodies of the enslaved people that used to work on the plantation. Yes. So there's like a lot of bad vibes, sad bad vibes going on right there.
Yeah, that cemetery was like a really powerful description. It's very depressing, like going past those old cemeteries, which I think is part of the way to show the time that has passed. You know, like there's plenty of old cemeteries around here, and they are really depressing to go through. Kyle and I, my husband and I, drove past one the other day, and some of the graves were broken. Like they had crumbled down to rocks, or kids had been jerks and, you know, smashed them. And like, that was really depressing. And while we're in that cemetery, we learn two really important key things. One is about Lionel, that he was a slave on that plantation. And his sister was one of the first victims for the headmistress and her I'm going to live forever spell. And then the other thing is that a lot of the girls that were taken, they were all conduits, and they were all around the same age. So like 13, 14 when she killed them.
Yeah. Well, no, that kind of happens a little later. First, we get the drop that Lionel knows that the headmistress killed her parents.
Oh,
and she's like, and kind of goes like through everything in shock.
Yeah. Oh, that was a good part too, because she's also like, well, how do you know that? And he's like, I just do. She's like,
that's not suspicious.
Yeah. She's like, details? No details. Then, off? Like, she does get rightfully mad at him, because that's a big thing to admit and then not give anything about it. And then I think she runs away and she goes back to her roommate, and there is another moment of, where were you? Oh, I was at, you know what? I don't want to know. Plausible deniability. Nobody can get it out of me if I genuinely don't know the answer. Issa's just like, okay.
She gets back to the dorm, right? She gets back to the dorm. We find out that somebody or something had gotten into basically like the head of their dorm, like their RA's room, and eaten her pet birds that are her eyes around town, around like the entire school. So like she's blind, and she uses the birds to sort of navigate the world, right?
Yep.
And it's somebody, it's assumed that it's somebody else's pet because there's a bunch of rules that go up, like, oh, all magical pets must be confined to their rooms, and they're setting up a curfew, they're setting up, if anyone
has any information,
anyone has information, if anyone breaks a rule, you will temporarily lose a limb.
Oh yeah. Why am I laughing about that? That's so awful. But like,
it was so, like, that was just like hard, especially because just around this time, where we're back in articulation class, right? And Issa doesn't get possessed, but she does channel something, either previous information from someone or some other portion of her power that she doesn't quite understand. And she ends up writing a whole bunch of pages in her journal, all 50 pages of her journal. She's filled up within the course of the class, or even like shorter than that. And it's all like in a language she doesn't understand. And it's something she's not even like, she says, she's not like possessed in that she has no control. She could stop if she wanted to, but she doesn't want to.
Oh yeah.
And that's sort of like the first moment that we kind of see her in control of some of these powers, like the not getting overwhelmed by some other ghosty or spirit.
Yeah, I felt like I don't feel like she was in control in that moment, but I think it was the first time that she was fully conscious, right? Because the other times her body is completely taken over. She's just pleading for it not to happen. And this time she was like, okay, this is what we're doing. And I'm watching this and I'm allowing it to happen. And it, in the other instances, it almost seemed like she kind of took this backseat dreamer kind of spot with that, where this time, you're right, like she was more forward, but I don't say that I would say in control, because while she was like, I don't want it to stop because I want to see where this is going, I still don't think that in that instance she had the power to stop.
Right. And then that's when the headmistress and the assistant walk in, and they're like, what is she doing? She shouldn't be doing this. And basically just trying to antagonize her into doing something. And she ends up being forced to articulate an incantation, but she hasn't been allowed to practice it at all. So she knows that it's some sort of like ruse to further cement the fact that, oh, you don't belong here kind of feelings, to further alienate her. And then so she starts with what she's trying to do. She's nervous. She can't get through it. She says like, oh, if I had been allowed to practice at all, like even once this week, I would have been able to catch these mistakes and fix them before now.
Yeah.
And at one point she keeps going, and she started with lines from, I think, like a song or something. And then she transitions into Shakespeare, and she's like, this must be something left behind by a previous spirit, because it's not something that she knows. She's quoting, like, I think she's quoting Hamlet or something. I don't remember off the top of my head. And then she moves into another verse, another sonnet or something. And, the assistant's like, stop this right now. And she's continuing to do it. And that's when the headmistress takes her mouth away.
Yeah.
Just straight up, like, Doctor Who villain slurps away her face. It's all smooth, no lips, no nothing. She's trying to scream, but it's got no place to go. And then she just kind of waltzes out of the room like, oh, loop-de-doo-de-doo, I just stole a child's mouth. And that is totally morally correct.
The punishments here are insane, right? I think this is definitely what Aunt Sabrina was talking about when she was like, this is not a place to send your loved ones. And so this is
why we don't trust the administration.
Yeah, this is why we don't trust the administration. Exactly. At least in, this sense. But she's got some administration's not bad. I want to be there with that, because I have...
Yeah, no, because Aunt Sabrina had warned her, don't trust the administration before she left. Yeah. And
then there is, right, we had the letter where they're like, you'll temporarily lose a limb. And it's like, okay, that seems pretty harsh, but all right. Oh. Huh.
Oh.
Well, now that I'm thinking about it, her roommate only has 4 fingers on one hand.
That is true. Though I think Myra did confirm that that was like a birth thing.
Yeah, but I mean, that doesn't
Yeah,
mean she
definitely
was.
suspicious.
Yeah, now I'm suspicious of the roommate. Yeah, so she just takes her mouth. That was so weird, and then it just kind of like wears off after a little bit, and she's like, "That was gross, and I hate that,
Yeah,
and I never want that to happen again."
Myra basically just gives her like a tub of vapor rub and she slathers it on her face, and then it just kind of grows back.
Yeah, duh.
I think that's Myra's a weird one because that's also when we learn that her cat is 3,000 years old and can walk through walls.
Yeah, see, that's another thing where now I'm starting to not trust Myra because Myra's also got a cat, and Issa is like, well, Miss Perkins would never do this. Right? I love the names for these cats. And then Myra's like, well, I don't think my cat would either. And it's like, oh. When they went in to go attack the essentially the RA's birds, which, as you mentioned earlier, are her eyes around campus, and that room in there is also completely trashed. Like somebody was looking for something in that room, and Issa winds up helping her put it all back together because nobody else had.
Mm-hmm. She had only like just gotten back there because at that point, after because just before this, they sneak out to go try and talk to one of the dead girls in the cemetery, Rachel, who was the last to die.
They don't go to try and talk to her.
Yeah, they try to do a seance, right?
No, they go and they resurrect her.
Their intentions were we're going to go perform a seance and we're going to hope that Rachel tries to possess Issa, and what happens instead is a big old green skeleton hand shoots out from her grave, grabs Myra around the ankle. Myra understandably screams and runs away.
Yes.
Before she, this zombie turns on Issa and then stops halfway through like, haha, I can't keep doing this. This is too funny. Joke's on you.
That turn though, that was so good because she does come out and she's like, oogie boogie boogie. And then and then she's like, she ran. Look at her go. And Lion was like, okay, cool. We have things to talk about. And Issa's just like, hold up. Y'all know each other? What is going on here? What is happening? And yeah, that is when we get well, she killed me, so she's obviously going to kill you information about the headmistress and stuff. But yeah, no, they went out there and resurrected a girl. They didn't have a seance. They didn't bring a Ouija board. They went out.
No, I mean there were candles, there were incantations. Issa very specifically said, "We're holding a seance. I've never done it before. Theo told me about this incantation." And later she's like, "I think he got it off a soda can, and I'm gonna throttle him later for this." But
oh my god, could you imagine like popsicle incantations off the popsicle?
No. Fortune cookie incantations.
Oh god,
in the same vein where you add something silly at the end of like your fortune cookie to make it make either no sense or make it sound dirty.
Snapple cap incantations.
But that is also where we get the confirmation that the headmistress is 300 years old. She has no siblings, no daughters, no children, and then she is the original owner of the plantation. She's the wife of the guy who owned the plantation.
She also has been perpetually pregnant for those 300 years.
Because that is how she slurps up the dead children so that she can live forever. She just kind of disappears for a couple years, and then conveniently her sister or her daughter or something comes by and, oh, there's a new headmistress now, except it's not. It's the same one. And it's sort of implied that like Issa goes, oh, well, no wonder she's been going after me, a black child on her plantation.
Right. So she disappears for a little bit. And this part's also really sketchy because people are obviously sending their kids there. They went there. Like, there are some generations of families that go there. And I always thought that it was really weird that, like, she goes away for a couple of years and then she comes back, like, long enough for these classes to move through and graduate, and then come back. And I'm like, okay, so you mean, like, no staff? Like, you've got a really high turnover rate for staff if you go away long enough for, like, one class to get through and then you come back.
It could be that they're in on it.
That's the other thing. Are the rest of the adults at this institute in on this? Are they also benefiting from a long life? And the only people that know about it are the dead children. On the note of dead children, it is still not clarified. Words are words. Clarified. What Lionel is. We know that he is not a ghost. He's not a zombie, but he is not alive. He is definitely undead, and that's as far as we got with saying what he is.
We did kind of find out that through Rachel that he is what's considered a guardian, where he is meant to protect the grounds. He was specifically supposed to protect his sister, who was one of the victims of the headmistress.
Yes.
Way back when. And then since then, that's kind of transferred to the rest of the students. And Issa at one point goes like, well, I'm not your sister. You don't have to protect me like that. And then she just kind of runs. But when Issa goes back to the dorm, that's when, she does the whole thing with Odette, the RA, because when she gets back, there's a strict curfew and everyone's like, and the new rule is they are no longer going to be physically attending class. They're basically doing school from home, very, very pandemic.
They're doing,
right?
Yeah, with magical Jack-in-the-Box teachers.
And that's what sends her over to the RA. She's like, oh, I don't understand what this is. Can I ask them? Do they know what I'm asking them? And all that. But, that's when she helps her clean up the rest of the room because, no one else has offered to help Odette clean anything up.
Yeah.
And she's at this point, she's back to using a cane to see, to kind of navigate through the campus. And she still is unable to see now because both of her birds are gone. And we get told that the birds were gifts from her grandfather. And she has a picture of him. And Issa goes, it looks like Lionel, but older. And then basically Odette says, oh yeah, his uncle was young and he got something, he got like a diary or a picture or something from him. I don't remember, an heirloom from him prior to his death. And that makes me think, Odette is definitely descended from Lionel.
At least from his family, because I think Lionel would have been the uncle that passed with that.
Yes,
yeah.
that was my thinking. So not specifically him, but from that family. So Odette's definitely got some kind of direct connection to whatever's going to happen in these final 10 chapters, 9 chapters, whatever it is. And I either have a feeling that she is going to be the linchpin to defeating the headmistress, or she's going to become the next victim. Because if the headmistress is going to go after anyone, like Issa's kind of setting herself up to be like, oh, I definitely am expecting this conversation. She's going to invite me over for tea and then kill me and suck out all my liquefied organs to feed the little monster thing in her belly. Or it's going to end up pivoting to Odette, and Issa's going to have to hop in to be like, aha, no, you got to stop this. And I don't know, uses her stolen egg timer or something to make her vomit because when she's getting back to the dorm after the seance, the failed seance and, successful resurrection, she uses the egg timer to slip past a guard at the front door. One of the RAs is keeping an eye on the door. And she's like, I don't have the premonition pickle in me anymore. I don't get to see 3 minutes ahead.
The Kool-Aid pickles. They were Kool-Aid
pickles, yes.
The Kool-Aid premonition pickles, which I thought was a very cute world-building touch.
So she can't use that premonition pickle to get around to make sure she's not caught. So she uses the egg timer to basically pause everything. She puts a stop on time for like 60 seconds, so she has enough time to climb up the tree and get back to her room. But she's only like getting up to the last branch as it wears off. And then, we're told that this person guarding the door is mid picking out a wedgie, kind of a little silly haha frozen moment, like, oh, they're stuck with their fingers, in pulling out their underwear. And then immediately she turns and vomits repeatedly, which is 100% a setup for something or other.
Yeah, I have some theories about that, and they really involve the headmistress, because she's got all the people that are making the rounds and going around and like protecting the campus at night. She's got all the student patrols, and we know that Issa has been in that office, and the headmistress twice now has tried to give her that flower. Right, so first she like outright gives it to her, and then she's like, "Oh, I brewed it into a tea." And Issa's like, I'm just gonna fake sipping this tea because that's super suspicious. And I think that maybe these girls have drunk that tea.
Yeah.
Either that, or it's just like, blatantly the effect of the time magic. But I don't think that it's necessarily the effect of the time magic, because then Issa and everyone around her would have been affected that way. And because the entire campus didn't just up and puke their guts up, I think it's more the tea.
Well, because we were told when we were first introduced to the egg timer, when the horology professor is fixing a broken vase that someone had knocked over from a shelf. And he had said that it only has a specific range of effectiveness. So it has to be within like 10, 15 feet or something like that. I don't remember exactly how much it was. So I think it only affected like the tree she was trying to climb and the guard that was right there. And she wasn't affected because she's the one that used the timer. Or maybe I think it could have even been like she's used to the horology, so she's no longer affected by the weird wibbly wobbliness of time. So she wouldn't be necessarily puking. Maybe the guard isn't in horology. Maybe she's not used to it. That's probably maybe why. Or if it's something specifically from the use of the timer being used in such a way to stop for such a long time. Because we've only ever seen it in like increments of like 10 seconds, I think is what, or 15 seconds, like very short bursts of time. And that was the first time that we had seen it in effect for an extended period of time.
If anything, I think that it would be more that she's protected by the egg timer than her being used to it, because she hasn't really had that many horology classes, and they've only worked in like 5-second bursts, right? They haven't really done a whole minute yet. They've done very small amounts. So I don't think that she has had the time to adjust to it. And,
that's fair.
And yes, it has a range, but to assume that, that range is like a cone.
I've been thinking of it like a area of effect centered on her, so it's like a little bubble.
Yeah, that's what
surrounding her, with her at the heart, and that's why it's she had to be, it's the tree and the guardian, not just everything.
That's what I'm saying. Like, she definitely would have picked up some girls that are in their dorms, or like walking through the hallway, and if that was the case, then there'd be a 10 to 15 foot bubble of people that just went bleh! And nobody thought that was suspicious. Like, I want to go back to the Jackbox teachers, because this is both a really good piece of world building as well as a really good piece of characterization, right? So we have the world building. We're told we have these little boxes, and like you're pandemic learning, and they have to, open them up, and they have to do it at the right time, the time of their class. And that's when their teacher will pop up, and they can ask them any question they want to, that these, what's the word? Like avatars of their teachers have all been loaded with their teachers' areas of knowledge. And so anything that the teacher knows, these avatars know. And that is one of the reasons that Issa's like, huh, and she goes to ask Odette, which leads her into that scene. But part of the characterization there goes back to the determination in this character and this cunning that she has, where she's like, well, if they don't know what I'm asking, then I can ask about the stuff nobody wants me to ask about. Because she has asked some questions of her teachers and been like, well, how do you go back like further in time? And they're like, you don't. Okay, well, how do you do this other kind of complicated spell? You don't. You know, and a lot of them, right? The headmistress especially, has been like, you specifically, capital Y, do not do any of this. And so she's seeing this as an opportunity to be like, I can get the knowledge that they're not going to give me.
Yeah.
Which I think is really great. We used to have a Jack-in-the-Box, and it used to go off all the time, so I am a little creeped out about Jack-in-the-Box teachers.
Yeah, Jack-in-the-Boxes are very much horror movie coded.
Yes.
I've always only ever seen them in, like, horror movie scenes, and it was for sure creepy. I wonder if, like, I want to know the answers to her questions, because she's like, oh, do they retain the knowledge of what I asked? Like, will it keep my search history?
Yeah.
That kind of question, because, like, what if they can see through these puppets, these avatars? Or is it just, because we do get told that it's just, like, been downloaded with their information has been downloaded into these into the Jack-in-the-Box. So I don't know if necessarily they'd be like, oh yes, we can now keep a 24/7 direct eye on every single student at all times.
Well, that was a thing that happened during pandemic learning. Where they found that some people were like, okay, well, your camera's on all the time, and so we can watch, and, like, you have to have this camera on, so, like, do you have to have this Jack-in-the-Box open all the time while you are on campus? Like, that's really freaky. And, you know, if we go back to Odette, who we don't really know whose side she's on, she could absolutely be like, well, no, they don't save your search history, and they in fact do. Or no, they can't see you, and they in fact do. So we're going to have to wait until this final round of chapters to really get answers about what those things can do. I think, all right, here are my predictions for the end.
Okay.
I think her parents are not actually dead. I think that it was like a spell that the headmistress did to make it seem like they were. If they are in fact dead, I don't think that Issa will be able to save them. What I want to happen is something with Issa's ghost powers. Like, I want her to channel hundreds of years of ghosts and knowledge to defeat the headmistress.
Oh, that'd be neat.
Yeah, like that's what I want to have. I don't
just
know.
Like a quick swap of all of the witches and things that take over her.
Yeah,
where she also uses her new animal possession skills.
Oh yeah, we got some of that in here too, where she's like, "This is new. I can kind of do it." What did she connect with in the second time? It's like a rabbit or something.
The first time she said it was when in the backstory it was a bird, and then then she did it with the horse, and then they were hunting like specific types of birds because their feathers help you fall asleep.
Yes, the fairy chickens.
Yes, she caught it like in a paper bag, and she was like, "Oh, I can feel the bird. I can, sense its fear and excitement and its shock or whatever as it flies around in the bag before they let it go."
I forgot about that scene where they just launch on these birds and shake them up in a paper bag. Like, give them feathers.
Yeah, because the person she's with is like, oh yeah, when they're stressed, they shed their feathers.
Right.
Like, well, why are you intentionally stressing out these birds?
I feel like there's an easier way to get these feathers, but okay.
And then Issa's like, oh, maybe we should start a club.
Yeah.
Maybe Master Gonzalez will be our club director. We're probably going to have to figure out a way to do this without, mentally scarring these birds. And then he'd be up for it. But
what kind of club is it? The Animal Abuse Club?
I would basically like to see her like hot swapping between ghost possessions and possessing animals in like her big confrontation with the headmistress. I also want to see like more of what like her friends can do, because it's kind of established in these chapters that Myra thinks of herself as Issa's friend and vice versa, and Lionel thinks of them as friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he says like, oh, this is the first time that I know what it's like to be cared for by a friend. Have someone on my side who's not, a blood relative or also a dead person. And those are not necessarily mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
And it's a really touching moment for her to be like, this is what it feels like to have friends. Yay. And, she's only still mildly shell-shocked about the news that, oh, it's the headmistress who killed my parents and has also been slurping up all these children with the little tentacle monster in her tummy.
And kill me and take my powers and other things. And it's like, yeah, I have friends. We're all gonna die, but we have friends.
Meanwhile, Myra's over in the corner. Plausible deniability.
I love her.
I am excited to see. I don't know what the ending's going to look like, because ideally I would love to see the parents. Oh, the parents are not actually dead. It was an illusion spell.
Yeah.
You actually buried a sack of flour or something. I think that would be a ideal ending. The expected for a middle grade fantasy novel.
Yeah.
And also, or depending on if Shanna Miles is going to make another companion book or more books in this series, maybe it ends with, a failure, or maybe it ends with, Issa not being able to successfully time jump to bring back her parents, but she does still time jump and messes up the timeline. She changes fate, she changes history and future in her attempts to do this time jumping thing. And then she's gotta deal with it in another book, or someone else has to deal with it in another book.
What could she mess up, right? Because in order for her to go back far enough to save her parents, she's got to go back a couple weeks. And that is above and beyond what she has been shown how to do. She wouldn't even be able to do that on the egg timer, because that's 60 minutes and it doesn't even go back in time. It just freezes time.
Yeah. And she also, I think, was told by the professor, oh, you have to bring something back together. You have to know exactly how it was at that time. And if she messes it up even a fraction, it comes back wrong, or it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Or I wonder if maybe she kind of breaks some international time law in this time jumping unicorn horse that we're told about in a news clipping or something, or it was in a diary that Myra found, where it's a successfully time jumping horse, right? And it's actually a guardian of time, and it's essentially the time variance authority, but a horse come to exact punishment and justice on time criminals, which Issa has just become.
Loki would love it if it was a horse. I'm talking about children's lit. I got it.
But I don't know how, or maybe it would splinter a timeline or something, but that would be an interesting continuation for the series if, Shanna Miles is thinking of making this a series.
Yeah.
But my prediction is Issa's going to be successful in stopping the headmistress with her current plan. I don't know if she manages to destroy the headmistress, or if she just manages to get her caught by, the magic cops and put in prison or something or what, but she manages to stop this current trend of killing children and taking their life force to feed her. And it's going to, she's I don't know if she's going to bring her parents back. I don't think the parents are going to be a successful endeavor. And I think she's going to end up having to learn to live with that particular failure. You know, she won the war, but lost the battle kind of situation.
You know, there's something else I was thinking of. It's been mentioned a few times in the book about bitter magic and the curse that's on the land. About how there was a curse that whoever died there was just, you know, you're cursed to be there and kind of work the land for forever. And it was old magic. It was bitter magic. It was laid there before anybody really knew about it. And one of the questions Issa has about it is, how can you curse people without knowing who they are? And everyone's like, I don't even want to think about it because that's above and beyond my understanding of dark magic. And I don't want to go down that road. I wonder if part of the headmistress's story and her game plan is this curse. You know, maybe she's doing it to keep the curse. Maybe she was the one that put it in place. Or maybe she's doing it in a twisted villain way where she thinks, you know, sacrificing one to keep it on the down low, I guess, is worth what she's doing.
Yeah. Ooh, I have another idea, because it was also kind of brought up in the like chapter 19 or 20. I don't remember off the top of my head, but there's a lot of like flirting between Lionel and Myra and Issa. And during just before their failed seance, quote unquote, you know, Myra's like, "Oh, I don't want to die before I have my first kiss," and she's kind of like insinuating that the same thing is going to happen to, or you know, that Issa also doesn't want that to happen, and Lionel should fix it or something.
Yeah,
you know, general sort of young flirting, right? And I have this idea that, I don't know how likely it is, but in the final confrontation, maybe Lionel exposes himself to the headmistress and, you know, protects Issa from some kind of magic, right? And just before he fades away, he gives her first kiss, and they're like, "Oh, it was my first kiss too," and it's very sad.
I hope that does not happen, because he's not just 14. He is 314.
Right. He is 314.
And that would be...
I forgot about that.
Really, really gross.
Yeah, that's not great for the middle grade audience.
No,
that goes more towards YA and new adult.
I have to complain about this again. I hate the age gap romantasy thing where they're like, "Oh, I'm a recently 19-year-old human and I found a fairy and he's thousands of years old, but we love each other." Like, that's gross. He's your grandfather 10 times over. It is gross. Please stop with this. I understand that there's a whole market of like vampire romance and werewolf romance and immortal romance, but like, put them on equal pairing. You know, it's one thing if like he's 2,000 and she's 1,000. That's different. Having somebody be 500 and somebody being 18 or somebody being 15 is really weird. It's weird.
I agree with the one being 15, but I enjoy this sort of that sort of age gap romantasy. I like it. I think it's, especially if it's in a sort of way of like, I have seen many come and go before you. You're just another one who's going to come and go, and I'm not, you know, going to get attached to you, but then lowering of walls. And I like it from that sort of perspective, not necessarily the romantic perspective, but I put up with it because that's what the majority of that particular trope is.
Yeah.
But yeah, if they're underage and one is like super old, gross. Yeah.
Time magic, bleh.
But now this makes me want to write a monster romance where it's two immortals falling in and out of love over the course of a very long time. That's fun. That's a new plot bunny that's going to be running around in my head for the next couple of days.
I like that, and they're both 16 plus a million years, right? Like, yeah. That's fine.
Anyway, back to Issa Igwe.
I had to take my side rant. It's important. I hope that all these things play up, that We don't have another world saved by a basketball game.
Oh my god.
I really enjoyed Fall of the House of Tatterley, but the ending of it just didn't live up to the rest of it. So I'm really hoping that this last arc, this last act, lives up to the rest of this. That's a wrap on this episode of Booked All Night. Click that follow button and subscribe to the show, share this episode everywhere you can, and don't forget to drop a review. We're a small corner of the internet, and every little bit helps. Visit the link in the show notes to see our other reviews, find us on Instagram and TikTok, and join our Discord community where we'll be running all of our giveaways, posting excerpts, and streaming our interviews live. Join today, invite your friends and fellow readers, and help us hit our first goal of 100 members. When we hit 100 members, we're going to run our first giveaway. Booked All Night is produced by Rob Cook. Whenever you share an episode, be sure to tag us at Booked All Night Pod and say hi to our guy in the sound booth. Join us next week as we launch into the final chapters of Shanna Miles' The Rise of Issa Igwe. Until next time, my little Libernauts, this is Jessica Mary and Magdalyn Ann signing off and reminding you all to stay booked all night.